Welcome to John Ferrian Live. Come on in. You guys know the routine. Get in here, drop your location in the comment section. That way we can see who's watching and where you're from. We love bringing you guests from all over the country. This time, Marlenee, I'm going to keep saying that right tonight. Stephen Marlenee is here from Idaho Falls, Idaho. And so if you're here from Idaho, drop that in the comments for sure. We'd love to hear who Stephen's neighbors are. So we got Tia Smith from Santa Barbara, California in. So, Stephen, I know you're listening in the background. People can't see you yet, but just so you know, Tia is here every single week, and she is from Santa Barbara, California, and she doesn't even snowmobile. She's one of my top fans. She's a big supporter. She's just awesome. I love it that she's here every week. And this winter, we're going to try to get her out on a snowmobile with some of my California friends. So we got Matt Ochinero, Mr. Ochi. We got him coming in. We got Bill Yeager coming in. John Anan. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right there, buddy. Who else we got? Oh my gosh, we got all kinds of folks. We got Kevin, we got David Drew, we got who else? All kinds of folks. Keep dropping in. We got Todd Kramer coming in, Mark coming in from Yakima. Nice job, buddy. So for those of you guys who are watching this, guess what? We have a brand new shirt logo that's going to be dropping on the website this week. It's not even available yet. So this shirt, when I was in Minnesota this past week, you can see I'm wearing it today. I had a special order of 2 shirts for myself printed. This is one of them here, and then you can see the digital version there too. I want to point out, this is amazing. We got an American flag logo, kind of worn in, broken in, and we've got live life to the fullest, make the most of every day, make a difference to others. Guys, you know that's what Live Large is all about. That's what we preach on this show. You guys get out there and keep making a difference the way you do all the time. And so, amazing new logo. I'm really proud of the work that Jessica Kramer has done on this new logo. So keep up the great work, and you can head over to that website later today, or probably later this week, to be able to pick that up. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that down, and let's drop that down. And then we've got a Woody's Share and Win. So we got the Live Large Share and Win contest. Woody's Racing is sponsoring the prizes this week again. We've got a Woody's Racing t-shirt, some Idahoan potatoes up for grabs for just sharing the show out. And guys, this is going to be an amazing show. I'm really excited. I got to talk to Stephen earlier this week, and I got to hear his story and what it's about. And you guys are going to be in for a treat tonight to hear all of the cool things going on, from the oil fields to working at Boondocker and everything in between. Lots of cool stuff going on. And don't forget, we have the sweepstakes going on, the Avalanche Alliance sweepstakes with the Climb Ultimate Backcountry Snowmobile giveaway. You can get a new snowmobile. You can get in on a Marlon sled deck. You can get in on, holy smokes, we also got Fly Racing Gear, $2,000 shopping spree, and Mad Ends has brought up 2 level 1 Avalanche classes for grabs too. Get in there. The tickets are available. The URL and everything is in the show notes here. So go in and check that out after the show, and you can get your sweepstakes tickets too. And all the proceeds, whether it be my shirts, whether it be the sweepstakes, all of the money is going over to ARI, our friends over there, the nonprofit who is building Avalanche curriculums and awareness for all of you, and training the trainers. All of those level 1 ARI trainers, those Avalanche education trainers around the country that are ARI certified, are being certified by ARI, and so that money is going to go to good use to be able to get this industry built up, to drive awareness and get you guys some additional classes. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the Live Large Share and Win screen here in 3, 2, and 1. Oop, hit the wrong button. There we go. How's it going, Stephen?
Doing well. How about yourself, John?
Doing amazing. And speaking of Climb Backcountry Ultimate Sled Sweepstakes, you're wearing a Climb shirt today. Nice job. That was a great little plug for the sweepstakes.
Absolutely. Happy to help anyone that's helping the cause.
Yeah, I actually have to give you a personal little a thank you, Stephen. You and I know this story, but I'm going to share the story with everybody else. Is when I was on my family trip this summer in Idaho, I was just right up the road, and I think it was Rexburg or something like that. I was at the hotel up there, and I messaged you early in the morning. I'm like, oh, look, Boondocker is in the area, in the neighborhood, and I thought, like, I knew you and a few others that were there, and so I ended up, reaching out to some folks, and, between bouncing around a little bit, I ended up talking to you that morning, and you gave me an amazing tour. My son and I, Max, were there, had an amazing tour through the Boondocker facility, got to see where all the magic happens, and what I loved the most was that you were such a gracious host that we literally just called you and you said, come on down and let's check it out. So I'm grateful for you initially for taking us around the tour. So I'll turn it over to you for a second, see if you have any comments on that. And then I got one more thing before we get diving in.
No, I certainly love to give tours, and it's really exciting for me to get people to see at Boondocker how much of the product we actually make ourselves. I think everybody
Yeah,
who comes to the shop and does a tour walks away saying, "Holy cow!"
yeah,
I thought maybe they just bought a bunch of stuff and packaged it together, but we build our own electronics, we fab our own pipe work, and so it's a lot of built-in Idaho stuff going on, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
it is amazing. It is amazing. And then before I left the building that day, you said, "Hey, are you going to stop in at Climb? Climb is just up the road here. What is it? What, 10 miles up the road roughly from you guys, give or take?"
Yep.
And you said like, "Hey, go up and see those guys up there." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know if I know too many people up at Climb yet." And so you gave me a couple of names to reach out to those folks. And believe it or not, that moment in time was the beginning of what ultimately became this partnership with this Avalanche Alliance, the sweepstakes with Climb calling me and getting me involved. Like that moment in time was really what helped tee it up. And so I'm in debt to you for making those introductions. And it just goes to show that network, network, network. We can never have enough people that we know of each other and kind of connect each other together. So
And at the same time, like it's so cool to me to get to be able to help somebody else. Like, and I went through so much time in my career where I was needing help, and so I
yeah,
can certainly respect what it's like to be on both sides of the ball.
yep,
And so to see someone go out and really make something happen like you've done, and the Avalanche Alliance with the sled giveaway is a pretty big deal.
yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
cool to have any part in that at all.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. That was amazing. So, Stephen, I've just in the last, what is it? I guess since when was I there? It was in August, right? I think it was early August, or no, it was July actually. That I was there in the first week or two of July, and so really that's
Mhm.
been I've known of you and I've followed you and I've followed your work. I've always been a big fan of your photography over the years and different things that you've been involved in, and to be able to meet you in person and kind of put the name with the face and kind of build a relationship over the last few months has been amazing for me. So I just want to say thank you for bringing me into your home and your family, not literally your home, but your family, kind of your Idaho being your home, and making me part of your network and your family. So
Absolutely happy to help, and that goes out to any one of the listeners too. If there's ever a way we can help advance the sport, that's what I'm all about.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's let these folks get to know you a little bit better. So just kind of high level, give us the rundown of who is Steven. So give us the rundown of where you grew up, where maybe you live. Where obviously we've established you work at Boondocker at this point, but give us a few minutes of just getting to know you a little bit, high level.
Yeah. So my name, like you said, is Stephen Marlenee. I grew up in Northeast Montana in a little farming community called Scobie, and so I think that maybe the whole county is 1,200, 1,500 people. So pretty remote. I think we're 50 miles from a McDonald's, if that's any reference for
I
anybody.
I love the fact that you can do that in the Midwest. You can say, "How remote do you live?" Like, well, I either live 3 miles from McDonald's, 10 miles from McDonald's, 20 miles, or 50 miles. If you're 50 miles from McDonald's, you're out in the sticks, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
So I'm 39 years old. I
Okay.
live in Idaho Falls, Idaho. This is surprising to me coming from Colorado what a center of the industry it is as far as mountain snowmobiling goes. People don't realize that there's a lot of big name companies that are based in this general area. And so it's cool for me to be able to even be a part of that, and maybe a little bit different hand in how things are growing as far as the sport's concerned.
That is awesome. And, even when I was there with you, you said, like, correct me if I'm wrong and feel free to add to it. It's like you have SLP in the neighborhood. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
Boondocker is in the neighborhood. Climb is in the neighborhood. And it's not too far away. You guys are, what, an hour and a half, and you're over in Alpine, Wyoming, and you've got, like, Dan Adams Clinic over there. You got Cody Hunt set up over there. But there's more people probably even in your immediate area. Anybody else you want to give a shout
Yeah.
out to?
I mean, Snow West is here,
Oh, that's right.
HPS.
Yep.
I mean, it's just the list goes on and on. There's a dozen or more companies that are
Yeah.
really behind the founding of mountain snow machines, and
Yeah.
it's just a different uh, atmosphere completely than Colorado.
That's crazy. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a
Awesome.
little bit else about me. I got three kids,
Okay.
a 3, a 5, and a 7-year-old. They're hopefully going to stay in bed all night, but I'm expecting they're gonna sneak out here at some point.
Well, I got to share that. This is amazing. This is what a versatile man you are. Is that Stephen? Like you and I are planning the show, and you're talking about it, and like this week we got maybe you may. I'll be honest with you. You made me a little bit nervous when I didn't hear from you from a day or so there as we're getting closer to the thing, and I'm like, oh man, I hope he doesn't like bail on me or something like that too. And then you sent me a message and said, like, yeah, something came up. My wife's got to go, and like I'm at home with the kids alone. And let's just be honest. Your kids are how old again?
3, 5, and 7.
3, 5, and 7. So you got basically a full-on grade school going on in your house, and somehow magically you've got them all put into bed and quiet so far, right?
Yeah, right. I
Keep-
blame the ice cream.
Oh, there you go.
Today.
A lot of
They were
sugar.
heavily bribed.
You got them ramped up, and then now they're gonna lay down and take a nap. Hopefully, right?
Yep, exactly.
That's awesome. So you got your work cut out for you, but I love the fact that you're a father first, right? Like you've taken this on. You're a husband, a father, and then part of the industry as well too. But it's so much fun, kind of just getting to know you and hearing your story and hearing about the kids. And if the kids come running in, let's welcome them in and let them say hi to the fans. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure they'll be on the other side of the boat here in not too many years.
Exactly. Yeah, hopefully they'll be out riding and shredding with you soon, huh?
Yeah, they tear up. My kids last winter went through 2 barrels of gas in their kitty cats.
Nice.
And so it's every day of the week. They're out there from the minute they get done with school to sundown.
That's awesome. I wish I could get my teenagers even half that excited about it. Like, they're more interested in playing video games and hanging out with their friends than they are snowmobiling nowadays. But I guess that gives my wife and I more time to hang out in the mountain together and have that quiet time up in the mountain together. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, the cool part about your story too is that there's actually a lot of people in the snowmobile industry and a lot of friends that I've gotten to know in the industry who started out kind of like you have. And, whether you're in Montana, you're in Wyoming, I'm sure there's South Dakota. There's a lot of states that have a big, oil business, right? And so that's kind of how you got your roots and your start as well, too. And why don't you take us back to kind of those early days in your riding career where you were in the oil industry and how that kind of evolved? Just kind of walk us through that evolution and how you ultimately ended up, getting involved in snowmobiling and photography and boondockers. Go ahead and walk us through this, and I'll jump back in along the way, and we'll have some follow-up comments and questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got out of college and I bought my first mountain sled, a Arctic M7, and pretty immediately I started in the oil and gas field in Big Piney, Wyoming.
Okay.
And so I was up there rocking the Jonah and making the big bucks. And as things went along, you come to find in the oil and gas industry, especially if you primarily only worked the north, that you had winters off. And it wasn't very long before we relocated to our corporate offices in Denver.
Okay.
And now I had, a really busy summer, but pretty much from Thanksgiving until the end of the first quarter, I was free to do whatever I wanted. And I had, a really great boss at the time, and he took care of me every way he could and supported me doing this. And, at that point, I was just a true enthusiast. I loved doing it, and I did it whenever I could get a chance, 3 days a week, 5 days a week. It didn't matter. And eventually, riding enough, I got the chance to meet a lot of people in the industry. And this is kind of one of those things that's really unique to Colorado. I haven't experienced that even here, as centric to the industry as Idaho Falls is. You go to Colorado, and it's such a social adventure. The parking lots primarily are huge.
Wow.
Rabbit Ears, I want to say Rabbit Ears is probably on 10 acres.
Nice.
Just one of the parking lots, and it holds a couple hundred rigs between the two lots. And so it's just a really social atmosphere. And I really got involved at that level. I got to hang out a lot with the Onashes. Kim and Adam had a lot to do with teaching me how to snowmobile when I was still, coming from Scobie. We're short track, ditch bangers, and the mountains are a whole new world. And I really have Kim and Adam to thank for kind of sticking behind me and showing me the ropes and pushing me, especially those early season rides that teach you how to ride a machine. And so I did that for quite a bit and decided I wanted more. And I really focused on getting involved. I remember a lot of people don't know this, but Chris Brandt is actually really involved in trying to keep people involved in snowmobiling. And every year at individual club levels, he's attends some of their meetings and helps do membership drives. And,
That's
so I
awesome.
went to the Mile High Snowmobile Club meeting, and at
Yeah.
that point I lived downtown. And Chris just really talked about how important it was to have this side of snowmobiling. And, I knew that I had no place in the sport other really than enjoying it, but the light went off and I was like, I can help. And so we got really involved with our local club, the Colorado Blizzards. I volunteered a
Yeah.
ton with them. I was actually given the responsibility to kind of manage the Denver Snow Show, and I did that for 4 or 5 years. I still help with the workshops and help the Colorado Snowmobile Association where I can, but I really spent a lot of time volunteering with CSA, and I wanted to make Colorado the center of snowmobiling, and I wanted everybody else to be jealous of what Colorado had.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just lead the sport. And I had a really good venue to do that because the folks at CSA were so welcoming. A lot of times you get into some of these and it's a good old boys club and they don't want anything new. And everybody was really open to everything I suggested. And beyond that, I got to learn, what happens at the politics level. And a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of folks in every one of your states that sit in these meetings and donate a lot of time, and all that's to preserve access. Colorado's got 3 or 4 full-time dedicated people, and that's just crazy to me that that's not even starting to approach where we as snowmobilers can really preserve or feel comfortable with our land. The fight is just starting, and a lot of people know that it's just going to continue. So I did this, and I really was involved in snowmobiling for a while. And because I was so involved with snowmobiling, it opened the doors for networking with people like Chris and Matt and, even Kim and Adam. And a lot of this stuff was going on because they were interested in supporting the sport. And I, on the other side of the fence, was interested in progressing the sport. And we had a need to get together and do this. And so over the years, I kind of got to foster a relationship with these guys. And I remember, how I really got the start of everything was a fateful ride with Mr. Matt Entz.
Yeah.
I got called down.
And before you jump into that, this is a really cool part of the story too. But I want to go back and reflect a little bit on your volunteerism, because it's so rare, in my opinion, that you get somebody who's at your level in the industry, whether it be working at a place like Boondocker, the photography that you've done and stuff too, to really, truly, and honestly, like I've watched the videos and seen you shred. You're an amazing rider, right? And so to hear someone like yourself in the stature in the industry that you're in, to really put the emphasis on what you just talked about in the last 5 minutes here around volunteering in a snowmobile club, and the work that everybody does. Like, a lot of folks who watch my show regularly know that, like, I here in the state of Washington have a front row seat to all of that. Like, I'm on the vice president of the board of directors for the Avalanche Center here, involved with the Washington State Snowmobile Association. I'm the state safety chair, member of like 4 different clubs, and ride coordinator here. And like, just pour, my wife and I both, we just pour a lot of ourselves into the industry and to see what the benefit is. And the part that you just talked about was all the importance of that, but then the part that you are also mentioned that I want to really highlight is the payback, which is all the incredible people you meet and the networking you get to do and the people and the places you get to go see and ride. And it's like, you're feeding the monster. Like, when you spend a little bit of time volunteering, you're feeding this monster of the snowmobile industry, which is amazing. And like, all of us who watch this show or are part of the show, and any guest that's been on there, I really want you to hear that. Like, all these people who are watching, I really want you guys to hear that and think about that. Is like, how can you get involved in making this sport as amazing as possible, and spending even just a little bit of time getting involved in snowmobile clubs, state associations, and making a difference in that regard. Like, that's where you can make a big difference, and guarantee you the payback is phenomenal. Like, and you're telling the rest of your story here too, but my own experience has been just all of these people and friends that I've gotten to meet is just irreplaceable. It's just priceless. So.
And the cool thing about volunteering is it can be whatever you want it to be.
Exactly.
If I had a bunch of my friends that were really turned off to snowmobile clubs because they didn't want to go do chili cookouts and these low impact rides or whatever was going on that was club related that weekend. And it's really not how it is. There's members in the Colorado Blizzards, as I was a part, there's members that are really involved in the politics side and never rode.
Yeah.
There's members that were all about the group ride. There's members that only really cared about doing the trail cleanup and making the
Yeah.
forest nicer, and there's members that were involved in all of it. And
But the
you can
cool
just,
part is everybody gives a little bit, and then it makes a big impact, right? It doesn't have to be
yeah.
one person or three people doing everything. So,
And, a lot of people, even in Colorado, I think take it for granted. They don't realize that everything we do as snowmobilers runs because there's so many volunteers.
amen.
All of the groomers in Colorado, I think every Colorado grooming club has an unpaid groomer operator. And it's this, flock of volunteers every fall up delimbing all the trees and making it so the groomer can get through and putting up all the reflectors and marking all the trails. And all this stuff is happening at a volunteer level. And it's turns around with so much fun for all of us.
Yeah.
But it also turns around with a big economic impact for these, small towns that are right near riding areas. And so
Absolutely.
it's just so important to the vitalization of your area to do whatever you can and pick up and get involved.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And so you were just about to start this the story, and these amazing people that you've met. You were out on a day and just happened to be riding with a few of them, right? And so go ahead
Yeah.
and bring us back to that moment in time and the story that was kind of a big pivotal point. And kind of it's interesting because everybody who watches this show regularly knows that we talk a lot about safety and education and just the positive growth of the sport. And this part that we're going to talk about here is like it's part of your journey of how you got into the industry. But it's also one of those moments in time where we realize, like, oh my gosh, anything can happen at any time, and you should always do your best to be prepared, right? So that's the thing that people should be listening close to as they get involved in this. So go ahead,
Yeah.
Stephen. So
Yeah. And so I don't remember the exact, who to what for. I don't know why, but I was down riding with Matt one weekend, and I think I'd convinced him to let me come take some pictures of him. I'm not totally sure. I think John Miller was there.
Okay.
And so we were out riding and having a good time and just trying to get some photos of Matt. And at this point, I had no idea what I was doing. I just bought a cheap DSLR at Best Buy, and
Awesome.
I was going to town and certainly on a ride that was probably out of my league.
Well, at least you had a good model in Matt. You had something to chase around, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and Matt's so good to work with. Of course, he's going to be really tolerant of somebody that's dragging everybody down, like I'm sure I was at that point in my career. But long story short, we were on this ride, and we were coming down a really steep descent. And I had the sled up on edge, and it was kind of one of those things where you had to hop, get the sled, kind of walk down this just horrible embankment. And as I was doing that, one of my legs broke through a crust ice or something like that, and the whole weight of the sled came over with me.
Wow.
It was kind of a high-speed bulldog maneuver, and I ended up crushing my entire tibia, like probably 6 inches down.
Wow.
At the time, I didn't know it, and so here I am. I heard this big pop, and we're in the back of South Fork. Matt might be able to correct me, but 15, 20 miles back in there, a long ride. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, at a minimum, I've got a torn ligament and we got to get out. And the pain was excruciating, but really all I could think about was how can we get an end to this? And so luckily, I don't know exactly what happened, but I think Diz happened to come by with a group of guys right at the same time. And so we had a couple of guys that helped me get the snowmobile back on the trail, and we had quite a long ride out. Got all the way out. Somebody, I think, loaded my sled on my sled deck for me.
Yeah.
I remember Diz pretty much had to cut my pants off. My legs had swollen so much. And so it was just like a really serious crisis situation. And just to watch people, it's an attest to Matt, especially, to not freak out and know how to handle that. And everybody was really calm. Let's calmly get you back to your sled. Let's stay on the trail and just keep a whatever pace you can go with.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did it, and we got to the end of it. And looking back, it's such a turning point for me, because it's the first real experience I had with things really turning for the worse. I've been on some people get bunked up, but that was something that the position and the place we were in was precarious enough that it could have got pretty serious pretty fast. And so I was just so thankful to be back to my truck.
Yeah.
And I get back there, and it's just this overwhelming feeling of warmness and just rush of adrenaline that's starting to come out of you now. Is like, I've made it, I can get home. And so I drove home and got home, and still at this point I really thought it was just a ligament issue. And so
Yeah.
I've had those before, and if you ever go to the hospital for a ligament issue, they give you Percocet and say, make a specialist appointment and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, they'll pat you
And
in the head and tell you to go home, right?
yeah, maybe hand you a set of crutches.
There you go.
So I hobbled my way out of there and waited till Monday morning, went into a specialist and was able to get in right away. They threw me under an MRI and pulled me out of the MRI and rushed me to surgery. And this whole time my wife's freaking out. She doesn't know what's going on. And here I am just racing in to get all fixed up. And I was groggy enough, and I didn't really understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, from a state of recollection, I can remember really being on the ride, and I can really remember being back in my truck. And then I don't really remember anything again until the surgery was over.
Well, it's just crazy. I mean, it's just crazy to think that, like, just completely out of the blue, something. I mean, and it didn't sound like you were doing anything crazy. It's not like you were, hucking yourself off of a big cornice or off a cliff, or, doing a re-entry and turn out and the sled fell on. Nothing that was super crazy that you see people do all the time. Literally just doing a pretty basic maneuver, and your foot. And I've actually had similar things happen where your foot gets wedged in the snow and the sled will come around, and like I almost tore my knee apart doing something very similar in spring-like conditions just this year. And it was actually a June ride up on Mount Baker here. And luckily I had friends there that were able to get over there and get my foot out of the snow quick, and it wasn't too bad. But it just goes to show you that things can happen at any time. And, the question you should always ask yourself is, who do I ride with? Who are the people I'm riding with? Can I count on them? Are they going to be available? Do you have a buddy who doesn't have a radio and is always around the next ridge, not trying to, hang out with you and ride with you? Or do you have people who are like keeping an eye on you when you're in that technical terrain and going to be looking out for you? Do they have radio communications? Maybe nowadays, I don't know how many years ago this was, but like, maybe nowadays, do we have a spot communicator or an inReach or something that we could ask for help if it was really bad? All these things you got to ask yourself about, like, who are you riding with and how prepared are you for a random thing like this to happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you said, it's maneuver. I'm sure if I've made it once, I've made it 1,000 times, and there's no rhyme or reason why it happened. And to see how it turned out was, a pretty big blessing for what it could have turned into. Yeah. And so, now I'm at this point where I'm bedridden.
Yeah.
And
recovery time, right?
Recovery time. And so up to this point, everything I've really done in the snowmobile industry has been super behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. Nobody probably even really knew who I was or what I'd done on the politics side of things or at the club level. And I wanted to have a little bit more exposure, but I also knew that if I could do this, I could leverage it to really progress the sport. Mm-hmm. And so as I was bedridden, I really thought to myself, what can I do to better myself for the next 6 weeks? I really can't work. I can't do anything. And so I started a YouTube university and learned how to edit photos.
There you go.
And, like I said, going into this event, I had no business doing anything. I'd never really taken photos before. And so it was just kind of at a whim. And I got to where I edited all these photos up for Matt, and some of them got used, but he had a conversation with me afterwards and was like, there's a real need in the industry for people that can do this. And you're pretty lucky because you have the relationships and it's easy for you to go and do. And I really sat and thought about that a while and realized how I could turn this into, at that point it was, how can I turn this into money to help the sport? And so, I worked absolutely as hard as I could to push my photography product on, whoever I could for sponsors and trying to get things hired out, and not really sponsorship stuff for myself, but trying to bring in money, and everything that I collected for anything photography, as long as I've been in business, has all been donated back to CSA. This is, just a pass through for me because I care about the sport and I love doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so it was one of those things. It was so not about the money and so not about anything other than the fun.
It sounds familiar, Steven. I'm just saying. I don't know where that kind of rings a bell, but
yeah,
I kind of know how you feel.
And it just grew and grew and really fast. I got a contract from Yamaha, and It paid really well to go to the X Games, and so
Yep.
in a matter of just 6 or 8 months, granted, I had this backlog of 5 or 10 years of volunteering, but
Yeah.
once the ball started turning, it went really fast. And so, over the years, I've probably been able to donate just myself, between $5,000 and $10,000 to CSA, which is
That's
a
awesome.
huge deal for me. And, that's not counting some of the projects I've been involved with that have really had a lot of help from a lot of people, but brought in some big money, to quite a few different snowmobile organizations.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And because I know, I don't know if maybe this is something you're going to get to or not too, but in our pre-discussion, you had shared with me some involvement that you had in helping the Colorado area get these beacon check stations, and it kind of tied back to a ride or an experience that you had in Cook City at one point in time. So do you want to? I don't know if that's the right time now to share that
Yeah,
or not, but go ahead.
absolutely. So I was up in Cook City, and keep in mind, I have this mindset where whatever I'm a part of, I really want it to be the best.
Yeah.
And so I was fully invested in the Colorado Snowmobile Association, and I wanted Colorado to be, the pinnacle of mountain snowmobiling.
That's awesome.
And I was willing to do anything it took to make sure that people had the experiences when they came to Colorado that they went home and were like, wow, that was really it. And so I was on this random snowmobile trip in Cook City, and as you head out of town in Cook City, the trail diverts over next to the guardrail, and there's a BCA beacon checkpoint right there. It's got a red X or a green circle, and
I've
you
been
know
there. I've
whether or
seen it.
not you're beeping. Yeah, and it's one of those rituals that I'd ridden in Cook City a ton throughout my life, and
Hmm.
I'd done it a ton, and it never crossed my mind that it was weird that Cook City has it and nowhere else does. And the light just went off for me, and I went home and really went to work on a program. I tried to model it after the Adopt a Highway Litter Foundation, or litter program,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever that's called. And so I really stole a lot from them, but I created a program under the state organization where these clubs can go and buy the signs, and they have the leeway to bring some sponsors on to help them pay for the signs.
Okay.
And the work's been done on the back end. There's a lot of work just on the Forest Service and verbiage and what the sign actually has to look like and where we can place them. And it actually got pretty tense for a little while, and then someone just happened to find a clause where the new administration is enforcing partnerships, and they're trying to leverage these partnerships not just in snowmobiling but throughout the park system, and all of our federal lands, where they can leverage these partnerships to build out bathrooms or any sort of upgraded facilities. And so we took advantage of that, and I think there's 20 some signs in Colorado now.
Hmm.
And
That's
that's
awesome.
something I'm just really proud of, that maybe, just maybe, one person went by that sign and saw their beacon was off, and it only takes one.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. You're exactly right. Something as just as simple as that, people will drive by, and like the beacon goes off or doesn't. It's you know, it's this catch-22, because I know there's a lot of people in the avalanche and the safety industry who look at that as you know it can be a bad thing, because some people, all they're doing is driving by and see if it's working, but then they're not taking the time to make sure that their beacon is able to search in search mode also, right? And so the reality is it should be just a good friendly reminder for everybody when they see that. It's like, man, we didn't do our trailhead check. Let's stop for a
Yep.
minute, guys, just around the corner up here. Before we head up the trail any further, let's make sure our radios are working. Let's make sure our beacons work both ways and transmit and receive. And that's the idea of it, right, too. And so just like a avalanche awareness class, what we don't want to have happen is people get this false sense of security that, oh, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
Because it should be just that friendly reminder to kind of go a little deeper, like with avalanche trainer, to get that extra level 1 class, go on to maybe pro level classes. If they want to go even further there, they can. But it's a great thing for a friendly reminder, but just that friendly reminder should trigger everybody to go deeper and do more, right? So
And the other piece of it that is important to me is, and we've seen a transformation of this over the
yeah.
last 5 years, is how do we make avalanche education cool?
Yep.
And so seeing all of your favorite riders stop at one of these beacon checkpoints
Yep.
that's a signal to everybody else that the pros are taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And so maybe I should too. And, you know, maybe it's not one person's beacon being off, but maybe it's just the simple pause reminder
Yep.
that it's important and everybody's doing it. And
Yep.
you really, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you can't be a mountain rider unless you know the safety aspect of it.
Yeah.
And avalanche education is a big part of it.
Yeah, amen to that. And that's the whole premise of the reason the Avalanche Alliance exists, right? It's like everybody in the industry, professional businesses, avalanche educators, everybody in the industry is coming together and saying like, hey guys, this is important. It's part of the ride, right? Like go get your training and then go hit the snow afterwards. But, as much as anybody can, and just know that, I'm sure, Stephen, you'll make yourself available too, but I know for sure I'll make myself available if anybody has any questions on where to get trained and where to get educated. Feel free to hit me up. There's so many great resources out there. So,
yeah, and if you can't afford it, there's also a lot of great resources with that as well.
yep.
And maybe you can talk a little bit more about that in a later time. But I think it's really important that everybody just take a quick second and get educated, even if it's just a quick review.
Yeah.
You know, just because you did a level 1 2 years ago,
Exactly.
it doesn't mean that you're ready to start the season. And it's everything. It's putting batteries in your beacon and getting, this is the time of year where hide the beacon in your drawers and go find it with your kids. It's a super fun game. I play with my kids.
Oh yeah.
All the time here.
Yeah, I've done that before too with the kids, like when they were littler, more so than recently. But just in the yard, go play hide and go seek with the beacons and stuff in the preseason like this, and get them used to getting ready to ride and stuff. And then we get out in the snow and do it later as well. So
yeah,
cool.
Yep.
Well, at some point, you decided that, man, I'm doing this photography. I'm getting involved in all this volunteerism. I got this camera and I'm starting to make some money at it. And then you just decide one day, man, like, I think it's time to go from the oil industry to get a job in the industry. And you headed to Idaho to go look for a job, right?
I did. So as much of it as it was anything else, it was a family decision.
Yeah.
And I know the people who are on here who've worked in the oil and gas industry know that it's not a very family friendly job. I was gone for months at a time, and it was really tough. And my wife and I made a decision that it was time to be done with oil and gas. And so we started looking, what could we do?
Mm-hmm.
And I was fortunate enough to get myself an interview out here. Let me grab a quick drink of water.
Sure.
So I got an interview out here in Idaho Falls at another company and came out and made it part of my summer vacation, spent a little bit of time in Yellowstone, just had a blast with the family and swing through and check things out in town. And while I was here, I happened to randomly talk to Alan Mangum and Jr. And Alan at that time had bought into Boondocker and
perfect.
Was really excited, knew who I was, and wanted me to come on board. As soon as they found out I was looking for a job, they're like, man, we'll hire you on the spot. And so, I came home from this lunch and learn meeting, if you will, with 2 job offers. And I just, to see it capitalize all of this volunteer time, not saying that that's why I did it, but it was pretty rewarding to see that, I was cared for enough in the industry and people responded to my work ethic and what I was doing and my love of the sport.
It's awesome.
It was pretty special to me. And I obviously took the job with Boondocker and moved out here. I've been here about 3 years.
Awesome.
And obviously a huge change. Now it's year-round fun.
Yeah. Well, that's the cool part. A lot of people, especially the people who watch this show, maybe don't realize that Boondocker not only does sled and sled performance, but you guys also are huge into side-by-sides is a big part of it, and then just other performance parts for off-road vehicles and ATVs and different things as well too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And another cool part for me is Boondocker's a small enough company where I get to be involved in a lot of stuff that's going on there. Everything from, dealing and managing the sales teams to all the marketing, and even getting to go along with the guys on the test and tune days. It's really exciting. And it's exciting to me because I came to this sport and I came to Boondocker as somebody who was not mechanical at all.
Yeah.
And the guys at Boondocker have really beat into me. happy to say I'm allowed power tools now.
That's awesome. How many
So
Band-Aids do you go into work with Band-Aids on your fingers every week?
no, no, I don't get to do it that often. They still keep me in the office pretty much, but it's really cool to me to learn at that level and to be able to go in and be someone who probably couldn't even have changed their own weights. To last year I remember I was in the race trailer and got roped into helping Keith Curtis rebuild a motor in
That's amazing.
like 2 hours in between runs.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's such a cool industry, and it's hard to remember all the time that it's also a job, because you're heading up going riding. And I talk to my family a lot, and I'll call my brother who owns a construction company in Helena.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like just cursing at me. It's 110 degrees and I'm up on the roof putting on roofs today and miserable. And I'm like, geez, I'm going to the sand dunes to go
test a new turbo on the side-by-side.
I'm going to go get some video in the Can-Am today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
It's pretty crazy out there. And it's just, I can't say enough about how important it is, regardless of what you want to do in the industry and where you want to take your career. If you even want a career, maybe all you want is just to have a place for your kids to ride. Yeah. But when it really comes down to all of it, in the end, it's all about volunteering.
Yep. Volunteering, networking, engaging, supporting communities and clubs, all of that stuff too, as well too. Yeah. No, I mean, it's you and I preach the same out of the same book, I guess, if you want to call it that. And it's give, and the everybody around you will benefit, including you. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about some of the cool things that Boondockers is up to, right? And so, obviously there's a million products. We can't go over all of them, but do you want to highlight a few cool things that are coming up for this season for Boondocker? And I guess let's focus on the sled industry, since this is a sled-focused podcast. So.
Yeah, so really the name of the game is going faster. And we will be unveiling a complete product line for naturally aspirated sleds this year. And so, lightweight, but again, and hopefully this has something to do with me being at Boondocker, but I'm really focused on how do we keep riding areas open. And for example, we just released this new reactor muffler, and I got to sit on the committee as we were bringing that product to market. And my number one thing, and I think this echoes throughout the industry, is I want something quieter. And
I'm actually going to stop the show right now, because I love that you just said that, right? Like, I'm just going to come in and tell everybody, like, you guys, this is finally happening. Like, we have companies like this who give a crap about the longevity of our sport, to the point that they're concerned and conscious of building products that not only perform incredibly, but are also conscientious of the, our environment, that's going to help us keep riding areas and land areas open. So big kudos to Boondocker for taking that on and making that a priority in this product development. So Stephen, I'm super grateful for that too. Like, I'm somebody who historically I don't even run cans because of the sound and the noise and stuff too. And as performance parts are available that are on par or pretty close to on par with stock noise levels, you and I should talk. I know you kind of hinted at that a few weeks back when we first got going too, but that's a big deal to me. So I just want to call that out and say thank you to you for what you're doing. So.
And it's a big deal across the industry. It's funny because I actually had a phone call with Chris last week, and we have another version of this muffler that was a little bit louder, 4 decibels louder, and saved a pound. It was a 1 pound lighter. And I asked Chris, here's what do you want? A pound lighter or 4 decibels louder? How do you pick? And so we had a long conversation about what's decibels and, how much louder is 4 decibels really. And we got done with the conversation, and Chris was on board with, I would choose the lighter or the heavier muffler. I would give up a pound to have 4 decibels quieter.
That's awesome.
And
that's true leadership in the industry, as far as I'm concerned. Like, that's amazing. Nice job.
Absolutely. And it's cool to see at every corner people are taking steps to advance the sport. And it doesn't matter if it's all the pros are avalanche conscious now, where they really weren't outwardly conscious like this 10 years ago. And when I shouldn't say that they all weren't, but as a majority, you didn't hear about avalanche education 10 years ago. It was
Yeah.
the secret of that skiers held. And it's just cool to see that those trends like that. I think a lot of these pro athletes don't realize what value they have in the industry, and that there's so many people that look up to them, and maybe it's even subconscious that you see somebody wearing a pack and you're like, well, Chris wears it, I gotta wear an Avi
Yeah.
pack.
Yeah.
And Chris wants quiet, I gotta have a quiet can, quiet and lightweight.
Yeah.
And so at every corner, it seems like there's a lot of really good people in the sport. And that's another thing people don't understand, is that these people, it's their job and it's what they do, and it's super fun. It's snowmobiling, but they all really care, and they're all really good, down to earth people, and they want their kids to have a place to ride just as much as every one of us does.
Exactly. Yep, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, anything else in the sled performance world that we need to chat about before we start wrapping this up tonight?
The last thing is just the vents. They were a huge success last year, and if you own a Polaris, you're silly not to have a set of these vents. They work so well, and again, is something that I'm really proud of as a company, that we've came up and solved a problem.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, and I'm going to actually proactively ask you a selfish question, and I know there's a few people who watch this that are in the same boat as me. Is we're picking up new Skidoo stock factory turbos, and so for the Skidoo turbo guys that are out there that bought the stock for the reliability, the warranty, obviously there's a lot of that as part of it. But what little tricks do you guys have up your sleeves to support the new Skidoo, factory turbos? Anything that you can tweak on them and give us a little extra juice?
So the muffler is the first place we're going to start.
Yep.
We're getting ready to release an ECU tuning suite,
Okay.
which is going to be really awesome. It's all going to be cell phone based and in the cloud, really easy. And I can't give you a whole lot more on that until we release
Top
it.
secret. I won't tell anybody, Steven. Like me and like 6,000 friends. That's all I'm gonna tell. I won't tell anybody else.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about that. The flexibility of where that's going to go, and that ECU tuning stuff will really populate through the rest of our lineup as the manufacturers come online with turbos. Really, we saw this same thing going on. Sorry, I had to clear notifications right in front of my camera.
That's okay.
We saw this same thing going on in the razor industry 5 or 6 years ago, and we're prepared to continue to be an industry leader in performance products, no matter what the factories do. And so on this Skidoo, a little sneak just for you is we've got some stuff coming behind the scenes that are really gonna be what the guys who are looking for the big power are gonna want. We got some hard parts coming for the Skidoo that just across the board, it's going to make the difference. It's not going to be in this pump gas world. We obviously have some stuff coming for that, but the high boost stuff. After I personally, so I'm not a Skidoo rider. I'll admit I was a Skidoo hater going into last season, and I spent all of last season on a Skidoo pretty much. And that high boost agility, I fell in love with.
That's awesome.
And I fell in love with high boost just as a whole. And it's a brand new world, and it's a totally different kind of challenge because things happen so fast. The sled's moving so fast all the time that it's not so much anymore about getting stuck and doing what you need to get stuck. It's what you need to do to not crash.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
that's awesome.
And that's a new adrenaline rush for me. And so I've really grabbed hold of that and look forward to riding a lot more high boost this year. It doesn't matter if it's Skidoo or Polaris, but I did finish the year a lot more open-minded to Skidoo, and I certainly will spend a little more time this year on one.
Well, you know what they say, it's all about diversity nowadays. You have to, be open to everybody and anything that comes along in the world, including Skidoos.
Yeah, and just like anything else, it was a child-seeded hatred.
Oh, yes.
In the town I grew up in, we did a lot of drag racing, and there was another couple families that were really Skidooed. So my town was split right down the middle.
That's funny.
Half of us loved Articat, and the other half loved Skidoo. And when it came to, obviously we were all friends all the time, but when it came to racing on the field, it was battle. And so
that's awesome. Hey, quick question on the vents you mentioned on the Polarises. Todd Kramer here is asking the question, what year of Polarises are those vents made for? What year ranges? Is it all the Access chassis, or do you have it for Pro both?
All the Access chassis. not for pro. So 2016 and newer 800 or 850.
Okay, sounds good. I don't see any other questions coming in. If you guys, we're getting close to wrapping this up, so if you do have any other questions for Steven, feel free to drop those in now. And Steven, I guess I just want to come back and say, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I really do appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful too. Like the fact that you quickly welcomed me into Boondocker, gave me the tour. Like those are the kind of people I love running into in the industry who are just you're like me. You love it so much. You just want to share it with everybody, and everybody's your best friend. They just don't know it yet, right? Like I just can tell
Absolutely.
you're that kind of guy, right? So that's amazing. Appreciate you and your new friendship. And let's just talk a little bit here as we're winding this down about is there anybody who you want to give some shout outs to kind of say thank you to, or shout outs to, that's kind of helped you to get to you are at this point in your career and in your life. So the
yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously we talked about this already, but a big thank you to Adam and Kim Onash. They took care of me when I was new at the sport, and same with Diz, did a lot. And Matt to this day is probably my best friend on the planet. And
awesome.
We talk almost every week, I suppose. And he really, more than anybody else in the industry, did a lot for me and helped me get, in contact. And it was really on the network side of things. Matt's great on the snow, and I've learned more snowmobiling with Matt than I probably have anybody else, but Matt went above and beyond in helping me network and get this whole photography business going. Not I should say that it was ever really a business, because I never kept any money, but it was just really important to me that, he knows I sure appreciate everything he did. Always the good folks at CSA. Scott Jones, if you guys don't know who he is a super pivotal person in not just Colorado snowmobile politics, but at a pretty national level. And so these people got to show me, what's behind the magic curtain, and things from going to AXA and some of these big snowmobile conferences to just the little backroom meetings that these clubs have. And I couldn't have enough time to thank everybody I needed to thank. My wife's been pretty patient with me for being gone most weekends for the last 10 years. But.
Awesome. So I got to have a couple more quick questions here for you. It says, can we hear about the new weights? So are there some new weights, like I'm assuming clutching weights that they're talking about? Are you able to reference those a little bit?
Yeah, so the high energy weights that just came out, the first revision is out or not the first revision, but Polaris, anything with the P85 clutch, it's really a crazy weight. And so in the past, one of the things that I've always struggled with weights is it seems like you have to give something up. And so you either give up off the line or back shift or, top speed. And it was really crazy because since I've been at Boondocker, there's a lot of engineering and design that goes on where it's put it together and then go see how it works. And the approach they took on these weights was completely different. And so they started with computer aided drafting programs. I don't know what they use, CAD version, whatever. But they built all these different calculators to say what's going on at every specific point during shift out, and how can we make it more complex and be able to really address all 3 points. How can I get better off the line? How can I get better back shift? And how can I get better top end speed? And, they spent 2 months in their offices working through spreadsheets and, real engineering work, and came out with these weights. And, it honestly was maybe like 10 different prototypes from the time they came out of the office with a design until we had these weights. And right away, I remember the first day we went up and rode them, and I was we were all breaking in sleds, and so everything was stock.
Yeah.
And I was like, something's wrong. Like, I don't remember stock sleds being this fun. And it was a blast. And
well, especially if they're still in break-in mode, right?
Oh, they're still in break-in mode, and so we expected it was just going to be horrible. And we had an Articat with us, and I don't know if Articats still do this, but on this specific trip, for the first 2 hours, you couldn't exceed like 5,000 RPMs.
Okay.
And so we're going down the trail, and it's horrible. This thing is going into some sort of limp mode all the time, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. And I'm sitting over here on this chaos having the best day ever.
That's awesome.
And so, it's one of those things where it's crazy because I don't know who else in the industry is putting that kind of engineering, as far as aftermarket companies.
Yeah.
Even being at Boondocker before that, I was like, this is just put it together and see if it works and come up with a cool idea, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things that was like well calculated out, and you get done with something that the weight works, and
that's awesome.
It works better than anything I've ever ridden.
Yep.
And those of you who have done business with Boondocker before know that it's a pretty big deal that we're 100%, everything's guaranteed it's going to work like you think it's going to work, and you can't mess them up. You choose the right weight, and it's coming out. It's like 2 or 3 sled lengths. I mean, it's really a for real deal.
That's awesome. Everybody better get some, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
So those Skidoo cans that you had referenced earlier, or the new can stuff, when are those going to be available? Are they currently available? Or are they coming out soon? Or
so it's pre-order right now, and we aim to ship all of our pre-orders by the end of October.
Okay, so coming up very quick. So yeah,
we'll start shipping those in the next week or 2.
Awesome. So you probably got to go to bed tonight, get up early, and start making some more tomorrow, huh?
Thankfully, I'm not involved in making anything.
That's awesome.
I am not a fabricator, and I'll be the first to admit it. We have some pretty amazing hands, though, at the shop. That the welds, the craftsmanship. You saw what was going on. It's crazy to me to think that I don't know how to explain it. It's like going to the grocery store and not realizing that steak comes from a cow.
Exactly.
And the same thing. You buy this turbo kit or muffler, and you pick it up, and it's just something you think maybe a machine makes, and in the end there's a person's hands touching that thing. A muffler is 6 hours of labor, I think, for us.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you get all that put together, and it's all handcrafted, and it's an experience that people really need to take for granted. This is built in America, and this is 20 some people right now that have jobs because of the snowmobiling industry, and
that's awesome.
I'm certainly proud to be a part of that.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. Well, all right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up. That's all the questions that are coming in. But any final words that you have before I take over and give the final shout outs?
I just want to say thank you for having me on. I had a lot of fun, and I was super looking forward to this. It is fun to be able to tell the story.
That's awesome.
I'm hopeful that the goal is maybe people come out, and even if it's 1 hour, take the time to volunteer where they can.
Absolutely.
And even if you can't volunteer for an hour, pick up and join one extra club. That $25
it does help. Yep.
That's a night of grooming.
Absolutely.
That's 4 hours in the groomer.
Yep. No, that's absolutely true. So one more quick question just dropped in. Somebody wants to know if the 850 Skidoo can is just a weight savings, or is there any increase in power also?
We'll be publishing all that stuff as the stuff rolls off in
TBD.
Publication. So
there you go.
TBD.
We can't give away all the secrets on John Ferrian Live, otherwise nobody would go to your website later, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And so I guess that would be my final comment. If you guys want to check out anything from Boondocker, just shop online. We got a team of sales guys in the back. If you have any questions, feel free to chat us up on Facebook or Instagram. We're here to help, and you would be surprised at how many calls we take for products that don't even relate to Boondocker. I swear, like 2 or 3 times a week, people call and ask what needs to be in their toolkits. So
awesome. Cool. And then one more question. It says, are the Boondocker weights that you talked about earlier, are they just for turbo sleds, or can they use them? They can use them on stock sleds also, or they work on both, or no?
They work on both. Yeah. And so, there's a big advantage on turbo sleds because of higher engagement.
Okay.
And there's no denying that, but I personally notice a bigger performance advantage going back to the stockers. And there's some confusion out there. I just want to give everyone the cheat on how you can order these weights, because they are a little bit different than everything on the market.
Okay.
So if you have a weight that you're really happy with, say you're in the mountains and you're on a turbo and you're on a 68 gram weight, just take away 7 grams, and that's what a number 10 capsule weighs, and that's the right body. And so if you're happy with your 68s, A 61 is the right body.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm not sure I understand what all that means, but hopefully the people who are buying them do.
Yeah. Right?
Exactly. Awesome. So my final words always with everybody is thank you, Stephen, for joining us tonight. Thank you, everybody who's been watching tonight. Really appreciate you on. If you haven't already, share the show out. It's been a great show. I think a lot of people have a lot of things that they can learn from the show, both performance related as well as some safety messaging and just kind of a fun story about growing in the sport and, going from one industry into the snowmobile industry and how you made it happen. So I think a lot of volunteerism and hard work paid off for you. So thank you, Stephen, for
Absolutely.
coming. And I tell everybody, God bless you all for watching. I appreciate you being here and live large. And right, got the new one, live life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others, just like Stephen has. All right, guys, have a great night.
See ya.